All right, we are looking at IXL Z12, and we are going to fill in the equation here. So you can see that we are going up by 1 each time on the x's. We're going up by 1 each time on the y's. So our change in our x is 1. Our change in our y is also 1. And we know that our slope is our change in y over change in x, which would be 1 over 1 then. So 1 is our rate of change or our slope here. Okay? And that's where this x is coming from. It's like 1x basically. All right? So now we're going to look at this other part. So we have y equals mx plus b. We know our m is 1, which is up here. We can see that. Our x is there, and we know it's going to be a negative b value. So we know we're going to start a negative value. So we're going to have to work backwards on our table to figure out where we start, because we starting point is when x equals 0. So we're going to draw a table here. It's our xy table. So we want to know when x equals 0. So we need to go 0, 1, 2, 3, and we know what 4 is. Okay? We know what 4, our y value is 0. Here we went up by 1 each time. So here, I'm going to subtract 1 because we're working backwards. So we're minus 1, minus 1, minus 1. So this will be x. So this is a negative 4 here. Notice our negative sign is already there, so we can just put our 4. Okay? Let's look at the next one. So fill in the missing numbers to complete the linear equation. So now we know that our b is going to be positive this time. Okay? Because it gives us that. So let's see what our slope is. We know it's our change in y over our change in x. Our change in our y values here, we are adding 14 each time. So our change in our y value is 14. Our change in our x value over here, we are adding 1 each time. So our change in our x is 1. Okay, so we know that our change in y over change in x is 14 over 1. Now, I'm going to pose to you, what is 14 over 1? It's 14. So it's just 14. Okay? So that means that our slope here is 14. So we know our m. So that's our m, our rate of change, our slope. So how can we figure out when x is 0? When x is 0, what is our y value? That's our starting point. So let's look at our table. So we know we have 1, 2, 3. And we want to know when x is 0, which is not in our table. This is 42, 28, 14. And here we're subtracting 14 if we're working our way backwards. Okay, so working our way backwards, we're subtracting 14. I'm going to work my way backwards here and subtract 14. And I'll end up with 0. Okay, so let's go over that one more time, how I found my starting point. So, if we know that we're adding 14 each time, okay, we're going to do this one more time. We know we're adding 14 each time, and we know when at 1 we have 14, and 0 is our next number, and that's what we want to find. So this is going to be our starting point, whatever's here. And if we were adding 14 each time over there, then we're going to subtract 14 here since we're just working backwards. So 14 minus 14 is 0. So you're going to write plus 0. Okay, so 0, 0 is our starting point for this problem. Now it says write the linear equation that gives you the rule for this table. But this time, you're going to write it ourselves. So we're going to write y equals here, because we're going to have to write that ourselves. Make sure you don't put any spaces, and see it says followed by an equal sign, so make sure you do that. So if we have our change in y over our change in x, okay, what's the change in our y side? So to get from negative 57 to 70, think about it. Pause the video now here and see if you can figure out the change in y over change in x, or the slope or rate of change or m value for this problem. Okay, so hopefully you found it already. So negative 57 to 70, we're subtracting 13. We're subtracting 13 each time. Okay, so that's our change in our y. Our change in our x. Looks like we're just adding 1 each time. Oh, try to do a little plus sign, adding 1. Okay, so negative 13 over 1 is the same as negative 13. So we know that our m is negative 13, so we're going to put our x there, because we have y equals mx plus b, and our m is negative 13. And now we're going to add it to our starting point. And our starting point is when x equals 0. So what is y when x equals 0? And it gives it to us, it's negative 57. So we can rewrite this. Oh, that doesn't make sense right there. So our b is negative 57. So we can do negative 13x minus 57 here. Okay, and that would be our final answer. Now, this one is going to be a little different. So again, we're writing this with y first, followed by an equal sign. We know y equal mx plus b. That's what we're going to look for. So we have our change in y over change in x. Our change in our y value, it looks like between 24 and 50, we are adding 26, or wow, would you look at that? We would be adding 26, wouldn't we? So between 24 and 50, we're adding 26. But on this side, between 12 and 25, what are we adding? We're adding 13. Okay? We don't need to do all of these. We only need to focus on 2 points. So our change in x is 13, and our change in y is 26. So our slope is 26 divided by 13, which is 2. Because if you notice, this will be a change in 8, and this will be a change in 4. So if we took the slope between those 2 points, that's also 2. And try these 2 points here, and they will also, change in y over change in x will also give us 2. Okay? We have a consistent rate of change with linear functions. So 2x, and now we need to figure out when x is 0, what's y? Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to work backwards on our table. And if we know that this is 12 and this is 24, okay, and we know the slope is 2x, we can also see that if we see here we're multiplying by 2. This is times 2. This is times 2. That's something interesting to note. So we're going to work backwards. So if this is 24 and that's 12, I'm going to try to see when this is 0, what's this value? Okay, and we know that this is getting multiplied by 2 each time. So this would get multiplied by 2. And therefore, that it is 0. And our slope is just 2x, or our equation is just 2x. So y equals 2x is the final answer here. Okay, I hope this helps. Please message me if you have any questions.